Welcome to Healthy Living. I'm Lori Johnson. Thanks for joining us today. Our topic is how our gut microbiome greatly affects the way we think and feel. My guest is best-selling author Dr. Stephen Gundry, and his new book is called The Gut-Brain Paradox: Improve Your Mood, Clear Your Brain Fog, and Reverse Disease by Healing Your Microbiome. Dr. Gundry, great to see you. Thanks for being with us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Laura. Great to see you again.
So, what motivated you to write this book, and what surprised you when you researched it?
Well, for many, many years, actually 30 years now, I've been seeing patients with leaky gut, intestinal permeability, and autoimmune diseases. And a great number of my patients, when I first met them, were on antidepressants. And they'd been on antidepressants for so long that they wouldn't even put depression as one of their issues. And yet there were these antidepressants. And when we started working with them, I said, how long have you been on these? And they said, oh, so many years, I can't remember. And I've tried to get off, but I can't. And I would say, you'd be surprised. We'll probably get you off of your antidepressants as part of what we're doing to improve your gut health. And lo and behold, almost everybody, either without my prompting, after 6 months or so, would say, I've weaned myself off of antidepressants. I don't need them anymore. And one of the things that almost every one of them said was, you won't believe how much better my brain works now. I had no idea, how much fog I was in. What surprised me, I guess it shouldn't have, but there are absolutely different bacteria in our gut that associate with being depressed or being anxious, number one, and we can identify those bacteria, and they get out of balance with the other bacteria in our gut. The second thing that probably shouldn't have surprised me, but did, was that antidepressants don't work the way the pharmaceutical companies claim they work by being what are called serotonin reuptake inhibitors, by making more serotonin in your brain. They actually work by changing the microbiome to a better, happier microbiome. If antidepressants work the way they supposedly work, then you should feel instantly happy the next day after swallowing a Prozac. But in fact, it can take a month or more to have an effect. And that's because it takes a month or more for these drugs to change the microbiome to a more anti-anxiety, antidepressant microbiome.
You talked about how the microbiome influences your mood. What about brain function? You talk about neurodegenerative diseases, and so many of us are concerned about that.
Yeah, we're absolutely having an epidemic in memory loss, in dementia, in Parkinson's, and Alzheimer's. And we know that there are certain genes that associate with a risk of developing Alzheimer's, genes that I've been studying for 30 years now, among them the ApoE4 mutation. But 30% of people carry these genes and they already have. And that doesn't explain why there's this huge increase. One of the most important studies looking at neuroinflammation, inflammation of the brain, is a study that was done looking at people in Nigeria who carry the ApoE4 mutation, which associates with increased risk of Alzheimer's, comparing them to people who carry that gene in Indianapolis, Indiana, and looking at the rates of developing Alzheimer's between those two people, age-matched controls. And lo and behold, the people who lived in Nigeria with this bad gene didn't develop Alzheimer's like the people who lived in Indianapolis. What was the difference? The diet between these two areas was completely different. And so it was the diet of these people that made the difference in the outcome. And as I talk about in the book, It's the diet and it's the production of leaky gut or intestinal permeability that promotes our brain developing inflammation. And it's all actually a part of trying to protect our brain from what the brain thinks is coming from the gut. So, Parkinson's, for instance, comes from the gut, not starting in the brain. Alzheimer's comes from the gut, not starting in the brain. And so we've really done a complete 180 flip over how we should go about, preventing these diseases and how we should go about treating these diseases. And the book lays out, okay, here's how we got into this mess, and here's how we can get out of this mix. It's one thing to be a doomsayer and say, oh, things are bad, but it's quite another thing to say, look, here's the tools that we can use to stop this, turn it around, and potentially just never get it in the first place. And that's what's exciting. That's why I do what I do.
You've talked before about getting rid of sugar and processed foods and eating a lot of fruits and vegetables. I wanted to drill down a little bit more about this situation with lectins. Let's say you're already eating a lot of fruits and vegetables and trying to cut out the processed foods. What about these lectins?
Well, one of the things that's interesting about fad diets through the years, whether it's the Atkins diet or the South Beach diet or a high protein diet, is that they're removing plant compounds from everybody's diet. Now, they talk about carbohydrates, but what they were removing mostly was grain products. And grains have proteins that are called lectins. And plants have a defense system against being eaten, either themselves or their seeds, their babies. And these defense proteins called lectins are designed to actually cause leaky gut, cause literally holes to appear in the wall of our gut that causes pain, that causes inflammation. In fact, Hippocrates 2,500 years ago said all disease begins in the gut. So in my program that started with the plant paradox, I said, hey, I have nothing against plants, but you got to know who your friends are and who doesn't like you very much. And get rid of the guys who don't like you or detoxify them. Use pressure cooking, use fermentation to have bacteria eat these compounds.
This is fantastic information. We're going to take a quick break and be right back with Dr. Stephen Gundry. The book is called The Gut Brain Paradox: Improve Your Mood, Clear Brain Fog, and Reverse Disease by Healing Your Microbiome. Stay with us. Welcome back to Healthy Living. We are discussing the gut brain paradox, the new book by Dr. Stephen Gundry, talking about how our gut microbiome affects how we think and feel. So, Dr. Gundry, you talked in your book about the holobiome, which is a word not many of us have heard. Talk about the holobiome and why it's important.
Sure, there was a 10-year study from the NIH called the Human Microbiome Project. And believe it or not, the term microbiome was only coined in the year 2002. So it's actually a fairly recent term. The microbiome was used to describe all the bacteria, viruses, fungi, molds, parasites, worms that live in our gut or in our intestines. And believe it or not, there's over 100 trillion bacteria alone that live in our intestines. But then, as a part of this, it was discovered that our mouth has over 1,000 different species of bacteria. Our skin has over 700 different species of bacteria. In fact, every orifice that communicates with the outside world has its own species of bacteria. So the microbiome really refers to the gut. The holobiome, as the word implies, is all of these guys taken together. So we're trying to get people used to the fact that it's not just the bacteria in the gut that make a difference. For instance, we know there's strong association between certain bacteria in the mouth and developing brain fog and dementia. Because if you think about it, the mouth and nose is right next to the brain. We also know that there are bacteria in the mouth that associate with developing heart disease. That's how I got interested in it. And we can actually see in people's plaque in their coronary arteries actual bacteria or other components of infectious organisms in those plaques. So we're learning that it's not just healthy eating that makes a big difference in people's outcome. It's taking care and balancing this holobiome.
So you're making sort of a pitch for people to, go to the dentist and floss every day. And what about the skin? What about the products we put on our body? Should we try to not use the antibacterial soaps? Or what are you saying?
One of the worst things you can do is use antibacterial soaps. Fun fact, which I didn't put in the book, but it's kind of fun. Sophia Loren always attributed her great beauty, lasting beauty, to the fact that she used olive oil on her skin. She also drank a lot of it, but she attributed her great skin quality to the fact that she used olive oil. Now, what's really interesting about that, olive oil is full of plant compounds that are called polyphenols, which feed friendly bacteria. But recent evidence shows that olives and olive oil have their own microbiome. And the microbiome, some of the bacteria in olive oil actually promotes really good skin health. So, Sophia Loren was onto something for reasons we didn't fully appreciate. But now we're beginning to realize that even something like olive oil improves the condition of the skin.
Talk again about bacteria in the mouth and how should we take care of that area of our bodies?
Yeah, that's a great question. Years ago, I presented a paper at the American Heart Association looking at the effect of asking people to floss every other day on a marker of inflammation called CRP, C reactive protein. And there's a strong correlation between CRP and coronary artery disease and other issues like dementia. The people who I could get to floss every other day dramatically lowered their C reactive protein. The people who didn't floss every other day had an elevated C reactive protein. And I was actually honored by the American Institute of Oral Biology for my discovery. So, what happens in the mouth is not like Las Vegas. What happens in the mouth goes lots of other places.
Love it. All right, we're going to take another break and be right back with Dr. Stephen Gundry. The new book is called The Gut Brain Paradox: Improve Your Mood, Clear Brain Fog, and Reverse Disease by Healing Your Microbiome. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Healthy Living. We are speaking with Dr. Stephen Gundry, author of the new book, The Gut Brain Paradox: Improve Your Mood, Clear Brain Fog, and Reverse Disease by Healing Your Microbiome. And Dr. Gundry, you talked about how the microbiome affects the way we think and feel, and that includes addiction. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, this was, I think, probably the most shocking thing that I discovered in researching this book. There are bacteria, alterations in the microbiome in our intestines that drive addictions to like nicotine, to alcohol, to even hard drugs like morphine or fentanyl. And I'll give you an example. If you look at people who are in alcohol rehab, and you look at their microbiome, the people who have the strongest microbiome that associates with craving alcohol do very poorly in alcohol rehab. They almost always relapse. The people who have kind of the least associated microbiome with alcoholism are the ones that do best. So if you can imagine, if we actually looked at the microbiome of someone entering any rehab program and saw that these guys were out of balance and worked towards balancing the microbiome as part of the treatment program, think of the options. I mean, the recidivism rate for any addiction program is about 90% failure. 10% will succeed long term, 90% will fall off the wagon. And that's because, and I submit, is that we really haven't gotten to the underlying reason. It's the same way with opioids. We know that there's an opioid seeking microbiome. These guys actually want you to go get some fentanyl for them. And they use pain to make you go look for painkillers. And the more painkillers you take, the more they eat that painkiller. So they take more and more of the same thing to get the result. And this has been shown in animal studies and in human studies that that's why the failure rate is so high. So what's exciting to me, as I show in the book, we've had some really good success with these addictive behaviors by changing the microbiome, by giving people probiotics friendly bacteria, but probably most importantly, giving the friendly bacteria the foods they want to eat to thrive, which are prebiotics like soluble fiber, and also the products of fermented foods, which are called postbiotics. There's a new word. So it's that combination. And the exciting thing is, this is not people's faults. You weren't born this way. You got these bacteria out of balance, and we can get them back into balance. And that's the exciting part.
It's very exciting, very hopeful, and fascinating too. All right, we're going to take one final break and be right back with Dr. Gundry. The book is called The Gut Brain Paradox. Stay with us. Welcome back to Healthy Living. We are talking with Dr. Stephen Gundry, author of the book, The Gut Brain Paradox. So, Dr. Gundry, you've made an incredibly convincing argument about why we should have a healthy gut microbiome. But a lot of folks are like, what should I do? What are the main things that people should start doing?
So there's three things. Number one, take more vitamin D3. The University of California, San Diego says the average American should be taking 10,000 international units of vitamin D3 a day, and I couldn't agree more. If you want to take vitamin K2 with that, that's great. But vitamin D is really, really important for making our microbiome more diverse, sealing the wall of our gut, and improving our immune system. Number two, eat more fermented food. Now, what does that mean? So you can have low sugar kombuchas, you can have kefirs, you can have sauerkraut, you can have kimchi. But the easiest thing is actually to have vinegars. Vinegars are a fermented food. And it's so easy to add vinegar into your life. I actually am the inventor of the healthy soda, which uses sparkling water and a tablespoon of balsamic vinegar or apple cider vinegar. And it makes kind of a healthy soda that actually feeds your gut microbiome. The third thing that I'll talk ad nauseum about, I can heal the wall of your gut. I can stop it being leaky. But if you keep swallowing razor blades, which are lectins, you'll just slice it right back open. And I see this all the time. So, in general, the more you stay away from grain products, except sorghum and millet, the more you use pressure cooked beans, and there's several companies like Eden and Jovial that pressure cook their beans, and the more you peel and deseed tomatoes and peppers and even white potatoes, the better you're going to do. And finally, stay away from cashews and peanuts. They're not nuts at all. They're really bad for you. Sorry.
All right, Dr. Gundry, we could discuss this for hours. Tell folks where they can get more information about you and this topic.
Well, so you can find me at drgundry.com. My supplement and food company is gundrymd.com. The Dr. Gundry podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, my YouTube channels, my Instagram accounts, and you can find the book wherever you get books sold. And please, please visit your local bookseller. COVID was a disaster for local booksellers. They're coming back, but they need your help.
So true. All right, Dr. Gundry, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your incredible research and work that has blessed so many of us, myself included. And we appreciate your time today as well. Take care now.
Thanks, Lori. Great to see you again.
You too. And thanks to you for tuning in to this edition of Healthy Living. I'm Lori Johnson, and we'll see you again next week.